leaders, welcome to the Together Project. I'm Kadi Cole, and if you're here, it's because you believe that real leadership means making room for everyone at the table. This season, we are sitting down with church leaders and innovative teams who are doing just that, breaking barriers, challenging assumptions, and shaping a healthier path for men and women to lead in ministry together. So if you're passionate about what it means to lead with authenticity, to make space for different voices, and to create a future where everyone can thrive, then you are in the right place. And if you believe in what we are doing, please take a moment to like and subscribe to the podcast and write a review. Reviews really help the algorithm suggest our podcast to more people. You can also follow me on social media at Kadi Cole, that's spelled Kadicole, and visit kadicole.com to sign up for my monthly newsletter and find all the other resources we have on the topic of developing female leaders. Because as Christians, we know that the future isn't male or female. The future is together. Let's dive in. Tim Lucas, my friend, thank you so much for joining me on the Together Project podcast today.
Kadi, what a joy. I'd fly across the country, spend an hour with you. You're a great friend. Thank you so much.
I love working with you. I love working with your team and being on your board. And I'm really excited to dive into this topic with you. We haven't spent a lot of time one-on-one discussing this, but I have been a fan of yours and your leadership for quite a number of years. You have been an early adopter of my book and some of the things I've been working on. And you also have a lot of really strong female leaders that you have invested in and developed within your church organization. And so I'm excited to pull the curtain back and get a little bit of behind the scenes on your own story about this and how you as a lead pastor navigate this and the things you've learned along the way.
Oh, I'd love to. I'd love to share my journey. I've definitely evolved, developed over the years, and can't imagine leading any other way alongside some of my sisters.
Awesome. Fill everybody in. Tell us a little bit about your background, how you grew up, some of the context around gender or work or leadership, either in the church or in your professional career.
Sure. Well, I grew up in a very traditional Bible-based Christ-centered church. It was a wonderful church, about 150 people, but all male leadership. No surprise. The pastor, the elders, the deacons, everybody. I remember my mom played piano. And, women could be, I think, Sunday school like helpers, but they were a little bit classic complementarian theology, where there were restricted roles and titles, et cetera. And, but I'm grateful for that church. I'm grateful for having learned the scriptures there. And actually, they modeled very healthy interactions one-on-one. But the corporate structure of it, or just the leadership model, was not one that empowered, I think, women looking back to use their full God-given talents and abilities. And so it's fun today because the church I lead at now, Liquid Church, is about 50% female leaders. And I am blessed to work with so many talented sisters in Christ who, in fact, are even our executive team, including you on our board.
And as you were growing up then in that space, when did you start to become aware that gender was a thing in leadership? When did you start to realize it was different for you as a man, or maybe you saw it in other people? When did that start to kind of dawn on you?
Well, it was interesting because I learned a lot from the secular world. Like, we can talk in theology in a minute, but it was a very interesting moment because, out of college, I began teaching. And of course, I was teaching I was a high school English teacher before I was a pastor, and married to my wife, Colleen, right out of Wheaton College. And she was actually a CEO of a media company. So here I am married to this high capacity, high powered corporate executive and working alongside some extraordinarily talented teachers in education. But then we'd kind of on Sunday go to church, and it's like, there wasn't the same kind of equitable leadership, authority, empowerment, influence. And so that created some dissonance, some cognitive dissonance for me, and began looking just kind of theologically, and again, I don't know how much you want to get into that, but there was a journey there, kind of growing up complementarian and understanding that, women and men, we are created, designed, bear the image of God equally, but we have different roles, responsibilities that complement each other, right hand to the left. And P.S., for me, that's a secondary issue. So I have friends who are all along the continuum, complementarian all the way to egalitarian. But for us, it was really a journey in recognizing that, wow, we have so many leaders in the church, in our church at Liquid. 60% of the congregation is female. But I think nationally, it's something like 10% of leadership is female. So it's like people can see, oh, there's a lot of me in the pews, but not a lot of us, in the boardroom. And so one of the things that really changed it for me, of course, we did a lot of kind of prayer and reflection and theologically trying to understand what were some of the restrictions that Paul was talking about, what was the cultural context of all of that. And also recognizing that there is something, right, to the male-female dynamic, particularly like in marriage, there's this whole federal headship. And still we understand that at the end of the day, as a man, I'm called to lay down my life, right, be the first to raise my hand on behalf of my wife. But in the church, it was very interesting because it's almost like we entered this alternate reality where women who were entrusted with incredible responsibility and incredible talents and gifting kind of had to put it on the shelf because we only had these prescribed roles. But you might be able to teach Sunday school, but you couldn't be the director of it. Or you could be a director of youth, but not the pastor. And it really seemed like we were being disingenuous and kind of playing games around that. And I think for me, it was really meeting a couple of real pivotal women in my own ministry career. One was Kyra Montañez, who is my Latina sister from another Mista. She, Kyra, she's a mutual friend for both of us, but she is now our executive pastor. She's my right-hand woman. And what was interesting is she came out of the legal world, actually as a trained lawyer, came to the church, started volunteering, and it's been a joy to kind of just be a door holder for her through her journey.
Oh, yeah, she is super sharp. And I think she, as well as a variety of other women on your team, have really benefited from the investment you've made and the doors that are open for her. And she's someone who goes after it. She wants to grow. She's very hungry. She's a self-starter. Makes it easy to kind of encourage that. You were a teacher, a high school English teacher. You got called into ministry really out of the overflow of your volunteerism, right? You were volunteering, leading, I think, a young adults ministry. That sort of really took off. That kind of was the beginning of planting a church. Am I getting the story right?
Yeah, well, what's kind of funny is my wife and I were co-leading that young adults ministry, right? So it was a next generation ministry for 20-somethings. We were at a traditional Baptist church, a 150-year-old Baptist church, firmly complementarian, but they had enough trust in us, and we kind of sat on stools. It was like a Regis and Kathy Lee kind of thing. And, we led this kind of singles adults Bible study, and even that dynamic modeling, oh my gosh, it's so much more emotionally healthy, vibrant, robust to model that kind of male-female partnership from the beginning. And people really responded. That was really the growth of Liquid. And we birthed out of that church. And it was so funny because here we are, church planters. We're called by God. We're taking a step of faith. I leave teaching. We're going to launch this church that nobody's heard of in a hotel. We have enough money for 3 months. Let's see if anybody shows up.
I just want to pause and say, too, this is in the middle of New Jersey. So this isn't the easiest spiritual ground to take a big step of faith like this. So you guys are really standing out in the world in doing this.
And our family was very supportive, obviously, having grown up in the church. However, this will just give you a little window in to my history. I'll never forget because when I let my parents and my grandparents know, I said, I'm going to be leaving teaching. I'm going to be stepping out as the lead pastor of this new church. And I'll never forget my grandmother. She looked at Colleen. She said, "This is beautiful. Are you going to learn how to play the organ, dear?"
Oh!
She said to my wife, who was the chief executive officer of a company in New York.
Oh
that
my
captures
gosh.
everything.
I feel like if I were to write a sitcom, I would write that in there thinking surely that wouldn't happen in real life. And then it did.
And it did. It was amazing. She meant nothing by it. That was
it was a compliment.
It was a generational stereotype. Like, we know that you guys are side by side. Yeah. So Tim's going to preach and you're going to play the organ. And so this gives you a little window into my heritage.
I love it. I love it. I would love to hear then a little bit about your journey with Colleen, who is a very sharp leader. Obviously, she stayed in the marketplace most of your careers and has been in this dual role with you at the church. What sorts of challenges or things did you learn in that season then of planting the church? She's working, you're not working, but you're still leading together. Like, what were some of the aha moments you had about even her journey or your journey as a male trying to lead women? Just talk a little bit about that from the early years.
Yeah, I think, when we planted the church and then we had really 2 children under the age of 5, at the same time. We're giving birth to this church. And then my wife's working full time. I'm working full time. And, there's a juggling act for obviously any couple, but my wife is, she's going into Manhattan, she's meeting with people and also taking kids to doctor's appointments and cooking dinner, or we're ordering out tonight. And we try to co-labor and really be a tag team partner in that. But it was interesting to me, it was a window into the double shift that a lot of women lead. In other words, they might have their 9-to-5 job, but then they're carrying at the same time the mental labor of running the home. Did the kids get off to school? Do they have their permission slip signed? And they're going to after school tutoring, but you pick them up from, daycare. And then we come home and, okay, now we're doing, everybody's got to get fed. We're helping with homework. Then there's bath and we're putting people down. Then I actually can get back to the work that I didn't do because I cut out early at 4:00 to take the kids. And it's like never done. And so I think seeing that at home really shattered a little bit of that stained glass ceiling we talk about where we say like, oh no, at church, these are very clear categories, to recognize that, oh my goodness, my wife, the women I work with, Lauren Berkerich, our digital director, Kyra Montagna is our executive pastor. In many ways, the way God wired them is to have this ability to do multiple things. I'm a little bit of a laser focus. I have some more limitations, but it was amazing to see my wife model that in the early years. And so it made me understand as a lead pastor, one of the great gifts I can give is extreme flexibility to women who are both working and raising a family.
Oh, that's fantastic. Talk more about that. What does that look like practically? What are the conversations you had around it? Where do those limitations end? How have you found your way in offering that kind of flexibility to high capacity women?
Yeah. So, one of the gifts I think that COVID gave us, right, is to think outside the box about what work flexibility looks like. We try to, here at Liquid, we are in the office about 3 days a week, and we say 2 can be work from home or from your campus, whatever works. But the women who I work with, I want to give even more flexibility. Again, it's saying that I have high trust. You're going to get the job done. I never worry about that. And so I want to show flexibility if you're not able to do that Zoom meeting, but you just want to send the Google Doc and we can comment on it back and forth and work asynchronously, kind of like, at different times. That's okay with me. And I find that it's highly, highly appreciated and valued by them, particularly the ones who have, I'm thinking of Lauren Berkerich. She was our communications director. Now she oversees our entire digital. She was a public relations director in the marketplace. And then she came here and we walked through her journey of pregnancy, and praise God, she's now had 3 children, but all of them are under the age of 7. And I'm like, Lauren, what do we need to do that you are able to stay healthy for the long haul? Just recognizing it's not going to be forever, but right now you're needed at home. And that's one of our values is we say, hey, family is your first ministry. So we just want to acknowledge that church does come second. But at the same time, if you are going to work full time and not scale back to part time, obviously there's a tremendous amount of responsibility that she has. And what I have so appreciated, for example, with her is she's handled it with a level of excellence, integrity, and candor. So we will have monthly conversations. How's it going? What needs to change? How can I flex without obviously totally making rhythms unsustainable? And I've just found that has increased such trust between us, even loyalty to the organization. Lauren is somebody who we say, hey, I always tell her, there's no lid for you here at Liquid. And I always say that to all female leaders. Like, don't say no for yourself. There's no lid for you, but we want to, be flexible enough that we can accommodate whatever season of life you're in so that you don't feel like you're giving a little bit here at home, but not enough, a little bit here at work, but not enough. We want you to feel like you're giving your full self. And if we have to flex, that's our joy to do.
That's awesome. I do think one of the things I've watched in your leadership that has made a really big difference is you're very verbal with that kind of affirmation, especially as women have grown in leadership. You may not say that to every employee because not everyone is a super high performer, but those leaders, both men and women, you're very equitable in your leadership, I would say, from my observation, but particularly for women, you are very clear and very affirming to their contribution. Even Lauren, who has actually turned down promotions because she's like, I can't take on anymore. But even the affirmation that says, you can turn us down, it's not a no forever. We'll be here when your kids are older. We'll be here when your season changes. You're not going to lose opportunity with us because you're prioritizing these these things. And you're very upfront about that. You even, when you talked to me about her, even before I met her, you explained a lot of those things. It's truly how you feel and what you think about her
Yeah.
and her leadership. And you let her know that. And so that gives her as a female leader a lot of confidence on your team to know that I can actually make this work. You're also older and your kids are grown now and, launching, you're in the season of launching and empty nesting. And so you do, sometimes when you're in it, it doesn't feel like it's ever going to end. And so when your
Right.
supervisor, your leader, your pastor can be like, hey, this is just a season that you have all these little guys around you. There's going to come a time when I know you're going to want to be, or you might want to come back, or you're going to have more capacity to come back. We'll be here
That's
for
right.
you when you want that.
That's exactly right. And we often tell that to whether it's somebody saying, hey, I'm going to take a leave to have a baby, or when I come back, I don't know if I'll be able to be full-time or part. We say, listen, let's make it a conversation. This isn't a decision that's forever. And like you said, it may be no for now, but it's not necessarily no forever. We just recognize there are sovereign seasons, right? If we really believe that children are a gift from the Lord, like there's sovereign seasons. And there were times when I was much more limited, right? When we had littles, and I was so grateful to Liquid being flexible and recognizing that. And that's what gives you leadership legs for the long haul.
All right, let me ask an interesting question then on the other extreme of that, because I know there are some leaders out there who are like, I would love to be able to offer that, but I've also been taken advantage of, or I feel pressure from parents, both men and women. I think there are a lot more dads who are taking a lot more time off for their kids or trying to prioritize. How do you balance, or how do you communicate that maybe to up and coming leaders? The leaders you've mentioned so far, they're at the very top of your organization. You trust them
Yes.
implicitly.
Yeah.
But you also have other, particularly female leaders who are growing up in the organization. They might be a younger generation also than Laura and Kyra, which has a different kind of viewpoint on that. How are some
Yes.
ways as a leader that you communicate, prioritize your family, take flexibility, but we still want high performance? You guys are a highly performing church. You run your staff, you expect great work, you want hard workers. There's not a lot of hanging around drinking coffee with each other, shooting the breeze. Like, you guys are on it. And so how are you building a culture? What are some of the maybe pitfalls you run into that you've learned lessons on, and how to help leaders grow into that kind of culture, but to steward it responsibly or still deliver on their side of that agreement?
Yeah, I think this is not even gender specific, right? This often is generational. So some of our younger members, or even junior players who maybe this is their first ministry role.
That's right.
We say, we want you in the office more, and it's not because we don't trust you, but it's because we want to train you. And that is not something that, in developmental stages, I just have found that some, particularly post-COVID, where there's a whole generation who's assimilating into the workforce, but over Zoom. And it's like, oh my goodness, so much is lost in that side-by-side, shoulder-to-shoulder camaraderie actually in the office. And so we will, a lot of times with teams that maybe have more younger generation on it, we'll say, you know what, we're going to actually move more towards the default is going to be meeting in person. And so, yes, we will allow a Zoom here or there. We don't love hybrid meetings, but we're going to ask you if there's something that's completely, you take your kids to get ear tubes, something. Just let us know at least a week in advance. So it's not kind of last minute haphazard or like it's your choice, because we just say, hey, we're being robbed of your presence and you're robbing yourself, because let's be honest, we've all been in a meeting where you're on the screen and everyone else is in person. And it's very challenging. I think we try to do that with all of our younger members so that they're catching the culture. We try to show more flexibility when you're here longer, and have shown accountability. Hey, you've earned the trust to know.
Yes.
We're not an organization that watches the clock or count hours, but it is something that definitely is earned, not just given.
That's so good. And trust is really the key word in that, because it's really not whether or not you have kids. It's whether you've earned the trust to have flexibility and still deliver on your job. That's excellent. Okay, so Tim, tell us some of the other things you've learned along the way as you've been leading Liquid. You guys have been fast growing for quite a while. You've been multi-siting. You're creating developmental pipelines. You want to increase the number of women who are leading. What are some of the other strategic things you've done along the ways to help encourage that or to develop female leaders?
Well, one of the things that we try to tell all of our leaders is, hey, we want to hold the door open for younger leaders, but especially female leaders. from the perspective of, and here's the thing, a mistake that I often, because I'll coach other lead pastors to say, hey, we want to empower more women in our church, but it's like we're going from nothing to everything all at once. And I'm a big believer much more in developmental incremental steps, because sometimes that can come, if you came from a church like I did, where there was a lot of restriction, it would be an anomaly for a woman to even do announcements, let alone preach a whole sermon. I'll give you an example. Can I give you an example with Kyra?
Please do.
Who's our executive pastor. So as I said, Kyra came to us. She's from Puerto Rico, came to New Jersey because her son Andy has special needs, Down syndrome, came to our church. We have a wonderful special needs ministry. We have so many gifted and talented volunteers who serve on the front lines. And so her and Jose made a home here. And she started saying, hey, I'm bilingual. Can I volunteer? And she started helping with Spanish translation. And that's when we were a portable church. So she would actually sit in the back of a hotel ballroom in the kitchen, translating, trying to keep up with, my Jersey English. And she did such a great job with that. She actually was like, hey, I'd love to volunteer more beyond that. And so that's when she began working with Liquid Family. She transitioned there to part-time, working with our kids, and killed it at every level. And that's when we really saw, like, Kyra, you really have an amazing teaching gift. You actually have a leadership gift. You know how to lead teams, build people up, give them honest feedback. They get better whenever you're in the room. And so we began giving more incremental steps. And so what was interesting is she's part of our teaching team now, right? And so she'll teach, once or twice in a series, and not just like on Mother's Day, but that didn't happen overnight. And it was funny. I was talking with her the other day, and she said, one of the things I appreciated, she said, is that you gave me a secondary stage to cut my teeth on. And so for her, she used to do what we would call the 411. It was kind of like the video announcements. We're a multi-site church, and she was kind of the face of that. And again, just killed it. And when I realized, wow, she has a communication gift and a very vibrant walk with Jesus. Like she's a woman of the word. The Lord speaks to her freshly. If you ask her what she's reading in scripture, she can tell you what the Spirit is saying to her. She's a Bible nerd. I said, you know what? Would you be willing to teach a preaching point and a short message I'm doing on baptism? And she was like, what do you mean? I said, well, I would teach the first point. You would do the second, then I would come out and do the third. And that's actually how we kind of introduced her to the congregation. Of course, she was so prepped. She hit that ball out of the park.
All in a second language, I might add, by the way. English is not her first language. So she is a rock star. It's pretty impressive.
Yes. And because of that people were just like, oh, that was great to hear from. Oh, that was the leader who does the 411 and works with the kids. And then I said, would you be willing to tag team a message with me? And so we actually tag team one. It was on male-female communication. And it was fascinating because she was bringing perspective on being a wife to Jose. I was bringing perspective of being a husband to Colleen. But was able to bring her full self. And again, that models, it's such a healthy dynamic for the senior leader to model a friendship that's not weird, that's not stilted, but truly friends. And that's, I think, such an important thing.
I love that.
We're friends. We're friends off stage. We go out as couples together. We enjoy one another. Her husband and I, Jose, are friends, and she's close with Colleen. And so it's a very natural thing, but modeling that for the congregation. They're picking up body language. They're picking up not just titles. And so when she actually, after the tag team, I said, would you be willing to do I think you're ready to do your own standalone sermon on Mother's Day. And then Colleen and I came out and introduced her and said, we're so excited. We've learned so much from our friend Kyra. And that just lent itself. It was the most natural thing in the world for her to join our teaching team about a year later. But that process was incremental over a period of 3 years. And it was really a coaching developmental process. So it wasn't just throw you in the deep end, let's see if you can sink or swim.
That's so perfect. And I think that's one of the things about you. You're a natural people developer. You gave her those kind of developmental steps, but simultaneously to speaking and communication platform, she was also growing in leadership. She was not the executive pastor then. Yes. I think when you first brought her out, she was maybe campus pastor. I think she had moved from children's to campus pastor. And then after a year, she went to multi-site director, overseeing all the campuses. And then she became executive pastor. So you had a leadership developmental pathway and a communication development pathway happening in a very integrated way. And so what's also excellent about that is her leadership on the leadership side demanded more influence on the congregational side, and offering her preaching opportunities or even just being a part of the messages on the platform matched that. And so it made sense to the congregation when she shows up in a leadership way because they've gotten to know her on the Sunday morning.
Exactly. And she was encouraged. She did tell me she was encouraged because she saw that we had two female leaders on our executive team already. And previously, again, when we started the church, it was just five guys on the leadership. Well, there were three guys on the leadership team. Then we had another guy, then another guy. And we realized, like, wow, we're not really modeling the making room at the table at the top of the influence chain. But the difference is we didn't bring in one female leader that could even easily be perceived as like, oh, token, or could make her feel alone. We brought in two. And I remember from hearing in Hosil Siegel, who is a wonderful, we've worked together 14 years.
Yeah.
She said that made all the difference in the world to her, that she came in, had another woman there. And so then it just felt, oh, this is just, we have brothers and sisters on
This is what
team.
we do.
This is just normal. This is just what we do. And that was one of the things that signaled to Kyra that, like, oh, I'm going to be the first female campus pastor, but I'm not going to be alone. And she was in that role at our largest campus, high profile, hit it out of the park again. Again, she's got incredible executive skills. And then she became our pastor over all of our campuses and is now on our lead team.
Yes. Now, one of the things, Tim, I don't even know if that you're fully aware that you do this, but one of the things I've really observed and appreciate about your leadership is you're very consistent among everyone on your leadership team. You have a mix of men and women, actually different races, different ages, and you are incredibly consistent in your friendship with each person. You have a really alive, engaged friendship with each person. You treat everyone very similarly. You joke with everyone consistently. You give feedback. You're a very strong feedback giver. I think you believe in candid feedback, and you have a very strong feedback culture. Talk a little bit about just that thought. It's not very common to see that. So first of all, I just want to congratulate you on that. It's very evident. I think your team health flourishes because of that. Talk about doing that, any sort of challenges you've faced along the way in treating men and women equally on your leadership team, because there are some boundaries you have to keep in mind. There are some unique dynamics. How have you overcome that or adjusted in order to make sure you're treating everyone the same?
Yeah, so friendship is a big deal for us, right? On our staff, team chemistry. And so it's like gender kind of takes a second seat. It's not like a main point of conversation for us. Ooh, do we have the right ratio of it? It's, hey, who has a unique gift set? Does it work chemistry-wise? And it's like the filter you use for basically anybody we bring your team. Would I want to hang out with them outside of work? And for me, one of the things that limiting sometimes with senior pastors is we see everything through our lens. If I'm a guy who likes to be outdoors and I like football, I want to find other guys who like outdoors and be with football. You're going to have a very narrow band of leadership influence. Like attracts like. And so I love diversity. I love having younger folks on who are exposing my bias towards 80s rock and show how old I am. But I love that they stretch me, that they pull me. We work in a very, very diverse state. New Jersey is one of the most diverse states in the nation. And again, I'm gifted on our leadership team, our senior leaders. We have everyone from Kyra is a Latina. We have two Korean Americans on our teaching team. We've got a guy in his 30s all the way up to I'm the old guy, right? 54 years old. Very different voices, different stage of life. We have people who have fostered kids, people who don't have children, singles. And so the more who you platform is who you attract. And I remember visiting one church. This isn't meant as a criticism, but it did ring something interesting to me. And they have many, many campuses. And I was asking, what's the profile of the campus pastor who really fits well for you guys? And he said, probably former college athletes. Like, we like guys who like played football or were wrestlers, guys who like to work out. And I get what he was saying, and he didn't mean anything by it. And this is not a criticism, but it was essentially saying this is a fraternity.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You are monotyping and you're limiting yourself. You are handicapping and handcuffing the growth of your congregation, the latent gifts in the seats. Because the reality is your future staff members are not outside you need to recruit. They're sitting in your pews this Sunday.
That's exactly right. Oh, so good. What do you think in your leadership are you still learning about? What are you still working on or learning about creating an environment where women leaders can thrive?
Well, I think we put a lot of safeguards in place, and this is something that still we're just continuing to work on, because we're like, if we're going to have men and women working side by side in the pressure cooker of ministry, hey, let's be real. We've seen all the headlines, the scandals, where there's emotional entanglement, affairs, all that kind of stuff. And that's why, look, it's a lot easier. Just draw a quick line. We don't really work together, and you're in women's ministry, but I'm over here. We're like, if we're going to work shoulder to shoulder, we have to have some safeguards in place. And so there's 3 filters that we use for kind of to train particularly new staff, but we go over them every year. And there's 3 filters that I always say when you're talking with members of the opposite sex who you're working with, just in the cut and thrust of ministry. It's the screen test, the siblings test, and the secrets test. So the screen test is, hey, when I'm sending a text or an email or a voice memo, let me assume that this gets projected up on the big screen on Sunday in front of everybody. Am I like, thumbs up, no problem, I have nothing to hide? Or am I like, ooh, gosh, I sent a text at 1 a.m. to, somebody else, and like, why would you do that? So we're always telling people, like, if you even have just a little bit of a check in your spirit about something, you're like, this is probably better in person. But if I put it on the screen, or I send it to them on a DM or even a Slack channel, let me assume it's going to end up on the screens. And that has saved people a lot of heartache over the years. The second one is a siblings test. We always say, describe the dynamic. Is it feel more like brother-sister? Like, hey, like Kyra and I, we have a brother-sister relationship. We joke, we kid, but it's never inappropriate, never raunchy, never innuendo. And again, generationally right now, right? Oh gosh, my son watches The Office, right? The Office is like all these double entendres, and that's what she said. That's the culture. But the reality is, here's what scripture says: among you, there might not be even a hint of sexual immorality. So we just tell people, coarse joking, sending memes. Did you see this? This is fun. All this stuff that is totally acceptable, flirting in the workplace, there is no place for it in the family of God. So we have a 0 tolerance policy around that. Again, we're not trying to catch people doing wrong, but we're saying, hey, leaders need to be above reproach. The best definition I've heard about above reproach is, it's not perfection. None of us can reach that. But above reproach means I live with such carefully thought out boundaries that if someone is going to accuse me of something, they're going to have to completely make it up, because everyone knows I'd never put myself in that position.
That's really good.
So
I'll
give you an example of how we do that. Like Kyra and I, again, because we also respect one another's spouses so much. We were working on something, I remember, and we had a one-on-one, and it was like, I didn't even get a chance to eat lunch. Did you eat lunch? No, I didn't eat lunch either. And it's like 3:30 in the afternoon. So we said, let's just do our one-on-one. We'll grab a piece of pizza, over at Annabella's. It's just an Italian place. And it's 3 minutes away. And we both went outside, got in our separate cars, and drove to Annabella's. Now, that's not because we don't trust each other. It would have been very easy, and of course, no problem. We could have drove over, but we just do that because we want to live above reproach. We don't want to even give the appearance that we would ever open ourselves. And again, I respect her husband, Jose, too much. She cheers for my marriage. And so those little inconveniences that we put in there help us live and lead above reproach. So that's kind of the siblings test. We ask like brothers and sisters. And then the last one is the secrets test. And the secrets test is you never confide in a brother or sister, the opposite sex, what you wouldn't tell your spouse. You never want to have a secret between you. And this is about avoiding emotional entanglement, because most impropriety, most affairs, most inappropriate relationships in the workplace, they don't begin in the hotel room. They begin by sharing of confidence of, hey, I'm really struggling right now with something in my marriage. And then, I get a sympathetic ear from you that I'm not getting at home. And that feels good. It relieves the pressure. But, now there's something between us. And so we go over those filters, the screen, the siblings, and the secret test. Every year, we often will have a panel. I'll sit on a seat, and then we'll actually put our lead team on. And we'll say, hey, collectively, we got like 100 years of leadership. Dave, you've been married to Lois for, my goodness, 45 years. How do you do that? How are you still madly in love with each other? What are the guardrails that you've put up? So we try to really demonstrate candor and make it a conversation. This isn't about catching people doing wrong, but it's a natural conversation that all staff, from onboard rookies all the way up to people like old timers like me, have regularly.
Oh, that's awesome. That's so good and so helpful and so clear and easy to repeat. And I also just want to reiterate you do that every year. It's something that you come back around, it's you talk about it again, you make it a normal part of the normal conversation. It's a thing that people are going to hear multiple times, not just one time in orientation, that helps really undergird it and keep it in the forefront for people.
Absolutely. We want to normalize it. We want to take away that
Mm-hmm.
stigma because listen, the world's talking about it in many ways, in all the wrong ways. And candidly, right? I mean, most people, you don't hear about churches that aren't imploding. You don't hear about, men and women who are ending their careers faithfully after 47 years of service, loving the Lord, loving one man, one woman. We want to have some of those headlines that are going to be read in
Mm-hmm.
heaven.
I love that. I love that. As we wrap up here, when you think of pastors out there, particularly male pastors, maybe who grew up like you did in these more conservative environments or are interested in making headway, what are some advice or what do you wish they knew about this topic? Or what do you wish you knew early on that you can share with them?
I never realized, and this is, Kadi, your book was so helpful to me and our senior team reading Developing Female Leaders, because you gave words to things that we were feeling but couldn't quite put our finger on or define. And that idea of breaking the stained glass ceiling, that there is this kind of invisible lid a lot of times for women that, again, may be from their traditions, their culture, their upbringing, their foo factor, family of origin. My grandma, oh dear, you're going to play the organ? No, I'm going to run a staff of 110 people.
That's right.
Like, whoa, that's amazing. But the thing that I learned, to answer your question specifically, is that idea of the sticky floor. That there are often voices inside a female leader's head that men never even consider. Men will apply for a job if they think they can do maybe 30% of it. They're like, I'm qualified. Women may be completely 90% qualified, but be like, I'm not sure I've got this in me.
Yeah.
And that was an eye-opener to me. I asked my wife, have you ever? She goes, of course I have felt that. Absolutely. And this is fascinating, by the way. I think David Brooks, New York Times, talked about this. Men, every year, drowning deaths, men are 10 times more likely to drown as women, but they go into the water at the same rates. So what accounts for 10 times more men drowning? Their confidence that they have the ability to swim and handle the undertow. So I was like, oh my goodness, that's quite a metaphor.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, thank you. Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. I do think it's hard for men to understand all that women overcome to do leadership. And so your words mean so much more to a woman than you could possibly imagine, especially if you are a spiritual leader, a pastor, you recognizing leadership, naming it, helping explain why they should apply for a job or that you believe in them to be able to do a good job. Those are just things that don't happen for most women. And so your words have 10 times the power for sure.
Hey, I can remember, this was interesting, and to the senior leaders here listening, it's little things said in the hallways after meetings that mean the world in terms of coaching and giving that confidence. I remember we had a young woman who joined the team and whip smart. She had great ideas, but she would always be like the last to speak when we were brainstorming. And whenever she did, I would have to say, if her name was Kadi, I would say, Kadi, I see you over there kind of in the corner. Do you have some thoughts on this? And she had a lot of thoughts, but she would wait for me to ask. And so I remember pulling her aside, I said, hey, listen, don't wait till everybody else is gone. Just jump in, just be one of the team and share your ideas. And she would, but every time she did, she would share an idea and she would say, does that make sense? It was kind of like this, I'm going to undercut my own confidence and authority in this particular area. I remember saying to her, you don't need to put that little crutch on afterwards. Stop asking, does that make sense? that you don't need to say that. And by me even just calling that out, and maybe that's too direct for some people, but I'm like, you're undercutting yourself and you have such value to add. Be confident in it. Don't apologize for it. And if it doesn't make sense, don't worry, we'll tell you.
And you're affirming that you actually are very articulate. What you're communicating always makes sense. The majority of the time, so you don't need to add this on as if the majority of the time you're confusing. You can take it off because the majority of the time you make perfect sense and we're with you. That's so.
So those little affirmations and validations is something that only the senior leader can do. And
Yeah,
it means a lot more than I thought. And
it
that's feedback
does.
that I've received from many leaders.
It does. What do you want to say to women? So, if there are some female leaders probably out there listening to this, what do you wish they understood about this issue, or what would you like them to know?
I think the biggest thing is when we model healthy male, female leadership, we are reparenting people. It is
Mm,
not just about having equity on staff or among salary, but we are coming from the culture right now. It is so broken, the dynamic between men and women, or it's polarizing. It's seen as this kind of tug of war. We have to
mm,
fight for there are more men, brothers in your corner than you know. We are not the loudest voices are on the extremes, of course, right? People scream, but there's actually a lot of people in the middle who, when we can figure out that dynamic, oh my goodness, the church, I'm a big believer in family systems thinking. And
uh-huh.
when people in the pews see men and women leading with grace and trust and equity and respect and honor and humility of one another from the platform, in the boardroom, around the table, in a retreat setting, when they see that they have thriving marriages and, oh, they're friends with one another, you are literally reparenting them from their own broken families that they might be
Mm,
coming from, or the cultural cues that they've absorbed just by living in the polarizing culture that we do. So I think there's a lot at stake.
mm.
It's hard, but it's 100% worth it.
Oh, that's so good. I love the reparenting framework. I think we need spiritual mothers and fathers to raise the next generation.
Without
And
question.
even, yeah, just remodeling that in a variety of ways is so healthy and so needed, especially in this world and definitely in this next generation. So, Tim, thank you so much for all this incredible insight and sharing your story. I just appreciate you and your leadership and your whole team at Liquid. So, thanks for taking the time today.
Kadi, it's always a joy to be with you. And I want to thank you for your thought leadership because it has influenced my own, not just thinking, but literally my praxis of ministry. And it has elevated our church. You're a gift to the global church. Thank you.
Thank you, my friend.
Thanks for joining us on the Together Project. Check out our free theological cheat sheet or grab a copy of my book, Developing Female Leaders, to learn more about the dynamics of how we can all do a better job creating church cultures where every leader can thrive. You can find those resources and more at kadiecole.com. Remember, the future is not just male or female. The future is together. See you next time.